coverage. I'm thrilled that David Thornburg is here, joined by Jared Solomon, who is a member of the Pennsylvania State Legislature. He's based in Philadelphia. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. David, talk to me first about Ballot PA Action, how you come to this table, and how you've been working literally for years on this cause.
Michael, yesterday was a huge day for independent voters in Pennsylvania. We're so delighted that you and your leadership have been a part of this effort. I could spend hours talking about how I got involved in this issue, but it is fundamentally a question of fairness and, as we asserted yesterday, of constitutional right. I believe, as you believe, that excluding independent voters is damaging to our political process and to our democracy, and it's just plain wrong. So over the years, I was CEO of the Committee of 70, longstanding good government group here. I now am involved with Ballot PA Action, which is also a nonprofit specifically focused on the issue. And we're just exploring every means possible to get this issue over the goal line. And again, yesterday was a huge step forward.
Representative Solomon, according to Gallup, they do a self-identification survey every year. For the 2024 survey, Americans were most likely to identify as independents, 43%, in comparison to those who said they were Ds, 28%, or Rs, 28%. That ties the record high for similar Gallup surveys previously registered in 2014 and 2023. Talk to me as a Democratic member of the Pennsylvania State Legislature, how you see this.
Michael, it's good to be with you, and thank you for all you're doing and joining with David and others. You were spot on when you said that right now in Pennsylvania, the fastest growing affiliation, which is 1.4 million Pennsylvania voters, are saying we don't want to affiliate with either party. We're choosing to unaffiliate or check none on the voter registration form. They are paying in to the election system. This is a public administration of an election process, and they're shut out entirely. We take their taxes, and they have no voice, no vote. We do this, we bring them in. This has a moderating impact on our election system, and we bring in new voices who have then a stake in our democracy on issues like healthcare, building a better economy, and education. We need this reform right now in Pennsylvania.
Is your open-mindedness toward this, are you the exception or are you the rule? Are others who are in the legislature affiliated with parties as receptive as Jared Solomon is?
No, I mean, I think the momentum is building, but I think a lot of it, Michael, is simply fear, right? You're an independent, Michael. So if my colleagues have to deal with talking to a Michael Smerconish, who on some days likes Democrats, some days doesn't like Democrats, some days likes Republicans, some days doesn't like Republicans, we now have to flex new muscles. We need to think outside of the box. And that's healthy for the system. I see it actually as an opportunity for Democrats and Republicans, but out of fear, out of establishment politics, big boss type politics, big machine politics, we just want to shut these folks out.
Hey, David Thornburg, let's recognize the late, great Richard Thornburg, governor of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Your dad, on a day, you correct me if I'm wrong, today would have been his birthday?
His 93rd birthday, and thank you so much for pointing that out. He was a great Pennsylvanian, a great American, and a great father. And I know he would be, at the front of the line supporting this reform as we announced yesterday. So thank you so much.
Let's also present this to a national audience as follows. I found interesting that, yes, we've spoken of the 1.4 million in Pennsylvania, or 16% of the total registered electorate who are not Rs and are not Ds. And then in our press availability yesterday, Jeremy Gruber stood up, the senior vice president at Open Primaries, and he said 14 states, including Nebraska and New Hampshire, have less voters in total than the number of those who are independent voters in Pennsylvania, another metric through which to evaluate this. He said there are 30 million independent voters nationwide who are precluded from voting due to closed primaries. And by the way, I get it. There are gradations of open and closed primaries. The way I've expressed it, and David, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, is that Pennsylvania is one of 9 states across the country that have a pure closed primary. The point is, it's not just us here. All across the country, a lot of folks don't get a say.
Precisely. In Pennsylvania, there are 3 big states among those 9: Pennsylvania, New York, and Florida. And I will say that because of our efforts and the efforts of Representative Solomon and your voice, Pennsylvania is leading those 3 states in the drive to make this long overdue change. But yeah, that's an awful lot of folks at a time when we need everybody in the process. That's an awful lot of folks that are standing out literally in the cold on election day.
David, some listening to this will probably say, well, Michael, you can vote in a primary. Go join the party. What should be my response to them?
I've heard that many times over. And here's the best frame that I would put on that. If your 18-year-old came to you as a first-time voter and said, Dad, I really don't share values with the Republican or Democratic Party. I want to be an independent. And you said to him, just suck it up and join a party. You would be encouraging, as his first act of citizenship, to essentially lie. And that seems to me just wrong. And I think that puts it in a proper framework.
Jared, how would you respond to that, recognizing you are a member of a party, but how would you recognize or respond to a person who says, well, we actually can join and we can participate in primaries?
Those folks are not protecting the integrity of your decision and others who simply don't want to be affiliated. And just to underline that, think about the people that we are pushing to the side. The fastest growing group of folks who are registering as independent are young voters, are veterans, and are a racially diverse coalition. So while every other state rolls out the red carpet and says, we want you to be here, we want you to participate in our democracy, because if you vote, by the way, you're then going to participate in our civic fabric and become engaged citizens. We here in Pennsylvania say, you know what? No thanks. We really don't want you to be part of that civic fabric.
Jared Solomon is a state representative in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. David Thornburg is the chair of Ballot PA Action. David, when you spoke yesterday at the press conference where we announced the filing of this petition before the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania that we hope will rule a 1937 law that precludes independents from having a say in primaries unconstitutional as per the state constitution, you put all of this in the context of a voting rights movement, and you referenced other examples from history. Can you address that issue for the radio audience?
Sure. And I think this is really an important point to make relative to this legal action that we took yesterday. Every big social or political movement in this country, you go back to the women's suffrage movement, you go back to civil rights, you go to same-sex marriage, has employed an artful combination of litigation, legislation, advocacy, grassroots organizing, neighbors talking to neighbors. You got to put everything on the line to make these things happen. So for those who say, oh, let's just let the legislature run its course and we don't really want to interfere, I think that's wrong, and that history suggests that's wrong. So by any means available, we need to pursue this change.
Jared, any insight into how this will be received by Governor Josh Shapiro?
I don't know. I think, though, to David's point, if we are all coming together as a unified whole in the through the legislature, we're pushing the legal actions. We have nonprofits weighing in. civic groups and associations saying we want this action moving forward with that unified front, we tee that up for a good result in the legislature.
For either of you, we all remember, of course, in the most recent presidential election, all of the emphasis being placed on 7 swing states. And among the 7, Pennsylvania received, I think, more attention, more of the spending in terms of our media markets and visits from the candidates than any of the 7. We really were the Iowa or the New Hampshire of the most recent cycle. And what occurs to me is that if we're successful and if independents are permitted to vote in elections, primary elections, in 2028, 1.4 million people who are not yet registered or not registered as an R or a D could have a significant voice. And there could be a lot of attention for that 16% slice of the electorate. A reaction from either of you to that?
Well, let me just point out, it's already pretty clear from the exit polls and from the post-game analysis that independent voters swing close elections in Pennsylvania, period. What we're and with Representative Solomon, I would say that's a healthy thing. Competition is good. But I would totally agree with you that if we're able to succeed in getting this change, it will supercharge and accelerate that phenomenon. And again, I think in a very healthy way, because if we stop believing in political competition, it's game over for democracy.
Representative Solomon, I said yesterday at the press availability, and by all means, you'll finish the thought you were about to offer, but before I lose this thread, I said that when we think of the 16% in this state, the 30 million across the country who don't get a say in primary elections, our missing voice is often one of moderation, which is in short supply in these polarized times. I further said that I believe that when independent voters are excluded from the nomination process, we foster the rise of the extremes at both ends of the political spectrum, and that better would be a system that forces candidates to have to appeal to a broader cross-section of society, including those of us for whom compromise is not a dirty word.
That's exactly right. And look, Michael, look at the numbers. 90% of House and Senate districts across Pennsylvania, there's no contest. So I mean, I don't know if you get jazzed up to vote on ballot questions in Pennsylvania, but most people don't. And that's all independents can do on their primary ballot. Now we bring them in. And the dynamics of that 90%, those 90% districts begin to change. In each district, in House district across Pennsylvania, you're looking at about 5,000 voters. So now someone like me, right, in a 85% Democratic district, now what do I have to do? I have to do paid communication to those independent voters. I have to knock on their doors during a primary. I need to engage them in town halls and other forums. That, if I'm far left or far right, now I am forced to talk to a group of people who are not going to affiliate and who come at issues in a very different way. And I think that's healthy long run because other states who have adopted this proposal have seen a moderating impact in their election systems through open primaries, and that has led to good government reforms like campaign finance and gift bans and all the reforms that we have been unable to move. So this has long-term consequences, Michael, not just on the political side, but on how we govern in Pennsylvania.
I think that's well said. Final question for David Thornburg. What's the relief that you are seeking through this petition?
Well, most immediately, if the court agrees with us, it will free 1.4 million voters to vote in primary elections. However, the legislature could choose to adopt any number of different kinds of reforms with that in mind. For instance, the state of Virginia doesn't require people to register to vote by party. We could do that, and in doing that, would achieve the goal outlined in the legal filing yesterday. So this is not we're not asking for a prescriptive judgment from the court. We're just simply saying, let my people go. 1.4 million are tired of getting frozen out on election day. But then, look, it should involve the legislature and Jared Solomon and his colleagues, but we got to encourage them in that direction.
Yeah, I wanted to make that clear. And Jared, if you want the final word on this, you certainly may have it. That David, we're not seeking some very precise methodology. There are different ways this could be resolved. We're simply saying, let us in. We want to say, Jared, final word from you.
Thank you, Michael, for having me. 1.4 million Pennsylvania voters need a voice in our election system. Think about a new, vibrant, growing, dynamic Pennsylvania, where rather than in our typical elections, when in House districts like mine, sometime in Northeast Philadelphia, sometimes we have under 10% of voters coming out to vote. That's not representative democracy. We bring these new people in. We bring in their thoughts and ideas on how to rebuild and redefine and remake our democracy. We increase our voter turnout. We improve our electoral system and create better outcomes in all of our 67 counties.
Well said. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Jared Solomon, David Thornburg, I really appreciate your being here to educate the audience.
Thank you, Michael.